Ah, hello there. Come closer. Sit down. Allow me to tell you a story, one that has occupied my thoughts for many years. It is a story about a man, a truly good man, perhaps the only one I have ever conceived. His name is Prince Lev Nikolaevich Myshkin. Our story begins on a cold November morning, on a train rattling its way towards St. Petersburg. The prince, returning to Russia after years in a Swiss sanatorium for treatment of a nervous condition, finds himself in a third-class carriage. He is a man in his late 20s, with gentle blue eyes and a face that holds a quiet, almost childlike innocence. He owns nothing but a small bundle of clothes. Opposite him sits a dark, handsome young man with a fiery gaze, Parfyan Rogojin, heir to a vast fortune. And next to Rogojin, a fussy, rather pompous official named Lebedev. An unlikely trio, wouldn't you say? Yet a conversation sparks. Rogojin, with a raw, unvarnished passion, speaks of a woman who has utterly consumed him, Nastasia Filipovna. He describes her with a mixture of adoration and fury, a woman of breathtaking beauty and a tragic past, once the ward of a wealthy landowner, Tatsky. Rogojin boasts of how he is now rich, how he will use his millions to possess her, to buy her away from everyone. He even shows the prince her portrait. And in that moment, looking at that face, Prince Myshkin is profoundly struck. He sees not just beauty, but immense suffering, a soul drowning in pride and sorrow. He feels an immediate, overwhelming wave of compassion. This is where our tale truly begins, with a compassionate prince, a passionate merchant, and the haunting portrait of a fallen woman. Upon arriving in St. Petersburg, Prince Myshkin, with no money and only a distant, vague connection, makes his way to the household of General Yepinchin. His wife, Lizaveta Prokofyevna, is a distant relative. The general, a practical and somewhat blustering man, is initially bewildered by this penniless prince. Yet Myshkin's disarming simplicity and guileless nature soon win him over. He even finds the prince a modest position and a place to stay. It is here that Myshkin meets the general's three daughters, Alexandra, Adelaida, and the youngest, the beautiful and fiercely intelligent Agloya. They are intrigued by this strange, gentle prince. They question him, tease him, and are captivated by his stories of life in Switzerland. They question him, tease him, and are captivated by his stories of life in Switzerland. He speaks of a condemned man's last moments, describing the terror and the sudden, desperate appreciation for life with such vividness that it chills them to the bone. He speaks with an honesty they have never encountered in their gilded social circles. Agloya, in particular, finds herself drawn to and irritated by him in equal measure. She sees something pure in him, yet his lack of social pretense baffles her. But the storm is gathering. That very evening, the prince finds himself at the birthday party of the woman from the portrait, Nastasia Filipovna. The air is thick with tension. Her former guardian Tatsky is there, trying to marry her off to the general's ambitious secretary, Ganya Ivolgin, with a dowry of 75,000 rubles to finally be rid of his obligation to her. It is a cynical, transactional affair. It is a cynical, transactional affair. Into this nest of vipers steps our prince. He sees Nastasia Filipovna not as a commodity, but as a wounded soul. And then the door bursts open. A drunken, wild Rogojin arrives with his rowdy entourage. He throws a bundle wrapped in newspaper onto the table. Here, he bellows, is 100,000 rubles. He offers it to Nastasia, not as a dowry, but as a price, a declaration of his obsessive desire. The room descends into chaos. Ganya is humiliated. Nastasia, caught between being sold and being bought, is on the verge of a hysterical breakdown. It is then that Prince Myshkin speaks. Quietly, he reveals that he has just learned he is to inherit a large fortune himself. And with the same simple sincerity with which he does everything, he turns to Nastasia and says, "I will marry you. I will take you just as you are. I will take you just as you are. He offers not a transaction, but acceptance. For a fleeting moment, a light of hope appears in Nastasia's eyes. She sees in him a way out, a path to redemption. But her spirit, so long tormented by shame and self-loathing, cannot accept such pure, undeserved kindness. She believes herself to be tainted, unworthy. In a fit of desperate, theatrical defiance, she turns to the company, mocks the prince's offer, and then, in a final dramatic gesture, she takes Rogojin's bundle of 100,000 rubles and throws it into the roaring fireplace. Ganya! Ganya! Nastasia, having created a scene of unforgettable scandal, announces she will go with Rogojin. She flees the party, leaving behind a stunned society and a heartbroken prince. Myshkin is left to grapple with the destructive power of a wounded soul and the brutal reality that his simple goodness may not be enough to save anyone. He has entered the world, and the world has already shown him its teeth. The prince's life then becomes inextricably linked with these two figures. He is torn between his compassionate, pitying love for Nastasia Filipovna and a burgeoning, more romantic love for Agloya Yapanchina. He follows Nastasia, trying to save her from Rogojin and from herself. He finds her in Moscow, where she lives in a feverish state, constantly running from Rogojin and returning to him, caught in a cycle of love and hate. Myshkin and Rogojin themselves form a strange, profound bond. They are rivals, yet they are also spiritual brothers, connected by their shared love for this impossible woman. In one powerful scene, they exchange crosses, a Russian tradition signifying brotherhood. But even as they do so, a shadow hangs over them. Rogojin, consumed by jealousy, later attempts to attack the prince with a knife in a dark stairwell. It is only Myshkin's sudden epileptic seizure that saves his life, the fit's terrifying cry startling Rogojin into fleeing. Meanwhile, Agloya falls deeper in love with the prince. She sees him as her poor knight, a figure from a poem who dedicates his life to a pure ideal. She wants to reform him, to make him normal, to make him hers. She wants to reform him, to make him normal, to make him hers. She loves his soul, but she cannot bear his social awkwardness, his inability to lie or flatter. She wants his perfect goodness, but she wants it to conform to the world's imperfect rules. The tension culminates in a disastrous meeting. Agloya, in a fit of pride and jealousy, arranges a confrontation. She brings Prince Myshkin to meet Nastasia Filipovna. She intends to force him to choose, to prove that his love for her is greater than his pity for her rival. It is a cruel, ill-conceived plan. The two women, both proud and wounded, lash out at each other. Nastasia, feeling cornered, challenges the prince. Choose? Her or me? And our prince, looking at Nastasia's tormented face, seeing her on the brink of collapse, cannot bring himself to abandon her. He rushes to her side, trying to comfort her. In that moment of pure, unthinking compassion, he loses Agloya forever. Agloya, feeling utterly betrayed and humiliated, flees in tears. The path is now set. Myshkin, bound by his promise and his pity, agrees to marry Nastasia. Preparations are made, guests are invited. But on the very day of the wedding, as Nastasia stands in her bridal gown, she looks out the window and sees Rogojin in the crowd. In a final fatalistic act, she abandons the wedding, abandons her last chance at peace, and runs to him, crying, "Save me! Take me away!" She chooses the darkness she knows over the light she feels she doesn't deserve. The prince, frantic, searches for her. His search eventually leads him back to St. Petersburg, to Rogojin's dark, gloomy house. Rogojin lets him in, silently leading him through the shadowy rooms. He leads him to the study, to a bed behind a large curtain. And there, lying still and white, is Nastasia Filipovna. Rogojin, in a final act of possessive, desperate love, has taken her life. What follows is the story's haunting conclusion. The two men, the prince and the murderer, the saint and the sinner, spend the night together, keeping vigil over the body. They talk in hushed, feverish tones, overwhelmed by the horror, the grief, and the failure of his compassionate mission. Feels his own mind begin to slip. Overwhelmed by the horror, the grief, and the failure of his compassionate mission, feels his own mind begin to slip. The strain has been too much. When the authorities break down the door the next morning, they find Rogozhin raving with fever and Prince Myshkin sitting beside him, stroking his hair, completely lost. The prince does not recognize anyone. His mind has returned to the fog from which it came. The beautiful soul, the positively good man I tried to create, was broken by the very world he tried to save with his compassion. He is sent back to the sanatorium in Switzerland, perhaps forever. And so, my story ends. And so, my story ends. Or was the world simply not ready for his kind of goodness? Or was the world simply not ready for his kind of goodness? I leave that for you to ponder. I leave that for you to ponder. If it moved you, do consider following along for more stories from the depths of the human heart.